It has been an incredibly long few weeks filled with Xbox news and industry news. So, to talk about it all, I've brought on a good friend, Travis Northup, to discuss everything that has been happening. Travis, how have you been?
I've been great, man. McClunky, happy to be back talking to my buddy Destin. It's been so long.
It's been a little bit. There has mainly been one big story that I think we need to discuss, and that is Xbox related. This is an Xbox ad campaign. I don't have the asset queued up. I'll fix it in a second. But what did you think about it?
Is this the one talking about the future of Halo, or are you talking about the Xbox one about everything
I'm
being an
switching the
Xbox?
asset. Give me a break.
There we
Uh,
go.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
this one.
yeah. So I saw this, and at first I thought, you know what? They're finally just saying, okay, we're going all in on this marketing campaign. We are going to do this is an Xbox, just showing that you can basically use anything as an Xbox. It's kind of been their philosophy for a long time now, and it did not go over well. What did you
Did it
think?
not?
No, it.
I
I don't.
didn't hear about it not going over well. My response was
On
okay.
on X, people
Ads
were
are.
very upset.
Oh, were they?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, my response was like, okay, this is like a cheesy marketing ad, like all cheesy marketing ads. Like I never watch like a commercial for any console and go, wow, I'm so inspired. But I don't have a problem with their premise of the case, right? Their thesis here, which is that like, let's do away with the boundaries of where you can play and let you play everywhere. That's kind of already been a thing, and this strikes me as maybe they're just trying to make it more kind of regular to normies, regular gamer folks. So um, I don't really, I don't really mind this strategy. And I said this on Podcast Unlocked. We were kind of talking around some stuff related to this, but like I think overall their strategy of saying like we're not going to play by the old rules of old consoles because we're frankly losing that game, and so we're just going to change things up, I think is really smart, and I think it has the potential to be a winning strategy, especially 10 years from now, where we're kind of looking back at this as like a transitionary period from people playing on dedicated hardware everywhere to kind of playing on their phones. And frankly, the next generation, Gen Z, really doesn't have the same kind of console loyalty, doesn't think about games in the same way that my generation did, millennials, which is they just want to play their games wherever they can play them. A lot of them aren't really like averse from like playing on a phone or whatever, and so I think this will be a lot more normal going forward. And I think even if a certain faction of people find this sort of corny now, it's going to make sense, in the future. So
I was very surprised by the negative response to it because I've seen the data that says console sales are not growing, and I think a lot of people on X just don't want to hear that. Like I spoke to every major analyst in the industry, Daniel Ahmad, Michael Pachter. I spoke to Dr. Sirkan Toto, uh, Pure Starting Roles, and all of them point out that like the console market isn't growing, or if it is, it's a very small percentage. So all of these companies need to look for new profit margins, and Xbox is sort of ahead of the curve. PlayStation is reducing their window to uh, launching on PC. It's now day and date for anything that is shooter, like Helldivers 2 is day and date, and Concord, rest in peace, was day and date when it launched on PC and PlayStation 5. And that's just their strategy going forward, and that's totally fine. So I think it's a little strange when you see this negative reaction, and even in the Xbox fan base, they didn't seem to really like this. Like, oh, it's the wrong message. But they're at the same time, they're also saying repeatedly until they're blue in the face, we are making new hardware. We are making a handheld. We are making the most powerful console ever. And it's like they've said it 40 times, and people are still worried about their games library. And they've tried to explain it to me. I don't understand where this fear is coming from. There is no indication that Xbox is going to stop manufacturing hardware anytime in the near future. I think this is smart. And I have seen the data that says that if a kid's playing on his phone, he doesn't want to have to buy an Xbox to play a game. And now he can just have access to the library. It needs more sell through. Or if they play on PlayStation 5, they don't want to buy an Xbox to play a new game, and that's why we're not seeing growth in terms of console sales. Partially, I do agree with the criticism about Xbox exclusives not giving people a reason to buy the console because you have access on PC, and there's not an exclusive that is like a must have the Xbox console for, not immediately in the future anyway, that's going to increase the sell through of the console. So I'm actually with you. You and I think, see sort of the writing on the wall, and like we know that the truth is most kids are just playing Roblox, and they just
Yeah.
want to play in Roblox, or they want to play in Fortnite, and that has caused some interesting challenges for the industry that I think they need to take a long hard look at, right?
Yeah. I think there's two separate things going on too, which is that, like, on one hand, there's the um like, hey, we don't care where you play, right? Which is kind of a separate thing. And then the other thing is the exclusivity. And I think people look at the fact that they're putting their games everywhere, combined with the fact that they don't seem to care about whether you play on a console or not. Hilarious. I'm getting my emojis to pop up
It
here.
just broke your whole
Um,
camera.
did it actually? That's so
Yeah.
funny. Oh my God. I
Thumbs
need to
up.
turn that off. Thumbs up for.
Oh, it broke the whole thing.
There we go. I
All
just
right.
left and returned.
Hi.
I need to turn those off in settings. That's
Yeah.
hilarious. Yeah, I think there's two things that we're talking about. One, which is their commitment to making new consoles. People are worried about that given this ad thing. And then separately, they're talking about how they don't care where their games appear. They want them to be on all platforms. And I think when you combine those two things, people are naturally afraid of like all this change. It doesn't mean it's a shift in strategy or that Xbox is just going to like abandon the gaming market. But I think that you really have to take a really narrow view of what Xbox is doing to believe that. Because if you look at everything else, the fact that they have like stealth announced in interviews, first with IGN and now with this Verge interview, the existence of a gaming handheld that they want to make, yet another piece of gaming hardware that
Yeah.
they're buying all these companies and spending billions and billions of dollars, which is typically not what you do if you're planning on exiting a market. So I just think it's a shift in strategy, and they kind of have to do it because Phil has mentioned a bunch of times that like they're not winning with the current game that is being played, and that's when you're supposed to change the game to mix it up. And they also, as Phil mentioned as well, they lost the worst generation to lose, the
Yeah.
generation where everybody was building up their digital libraries and deciding where they were going to live for the rest of their gaming lives. So I think that adds an extra layer of complexity, but I think they're adapting as best you can. It's adapt or die, right?
Mhm. Yeah. And a lot of people are like, haha, Xbox is losing the console war. I'm like, bro, they said that like 4 years ago. They admitted they
Yeah.
lost. They know they lost the console war. There's no more console war. It's over.
Yep.
It like ended last year, was definitely a point for me where I'm like, oh, the console war's done. Like Microsoft isn't really in it. They're still going to make hardware, but that's just not their philosophy. They're going to release their games on PlayStation. Indiana Jones is coming just a few months later, and there's a lot of, we're talking about the no red line quote in just a second, but just to focus in on their strategies, they also had this announcement today that was more well received about how you can play games that you already own on the cloud. And I have the website up here, so I'll just read you a little bit about it. Our mission is to bring more games to more people around the world across devices. We believe gaming should be easy to access and available for all players, no matter what device you choose to play with. That's why we're dedicated to making great games available across consoles, PCs, and with cloud gaming. And they announced something like 50 games that are going to be releasing right now, and you can buy them to own them. So if you buy them on any of these cloud streaming devices, you just own those games and you can play them wherever Xbox is available. Yeah, 50 great games available today, with more to come. We're happy to announce that over 50 great games are now available for streaming. Our library of cloud playable titles will continue to grow as we work with our partners around the world to bring you a diverse and expansive selection of great games across devices. And then it's just a list of like 50 games. And I believe you own these if you end up purchasing them, but I just saw that on Twitter. I would have to actually get the quote. That was from Jez Corden over there at Windows Central. But
Yeah.
long
I
story
mean, I think
short,
I
that's the
I think
strategy. They're
yeah.
just like, buy your games wherever. Like, we don't care. You don't have to buy them twice on the Xbox ecosystem. You're good to go.
Yeah, and I think if you already own them, you can just pop open that app and play on them. So
Hmm.
that's huge because I mean I own a ton of games, and although I have like a portable Xbox I take with me, it would certainly be nice if I could just in a hotel room pop open a laptop and play games I own on my console at home, and it's pretty seamless, which is huge.
Hmm. I'm excited about that. That one was met with more positivity. But the big question that I have is more about the Xbox handheld. We talked about it a lot. I think it's an incredibly smart strategy. I do wish they were able to announce it or launch it a little bit sooner to have an answer to the PlayStation 5 Pro, because they could have been like, okay, PlayStation's launching the $700 thing. We're launching a portable device where you can still have access to all your existing games. And like, we're making this new piece of hardware. I think it would have been a very compelling talking point because it would have been obviously cheaper than a PlayStation 5 Pro and offered something of interest to people that like the Steam Deck, people that like the Switch. Switch is dragging their feet on getting the Switch 2 out the door, and Xbox could have beat them to the punch. That's not what happened. But they are announcing this new hardware, and my pie in the sky idea, Travis, is this. Whatever new hardware they launch, the handheld, the console, whatever, they need to let other services be on it like Steam. And if Steam is on that device and they figure out whatever relationship, that means PlayStation games are now on Xbox. And I think it would sell like crazy. If people
Hmm.
knew that they could access more games, even with a delay, even with like a year delay, I think that that would be a very enticing purchase point for a lot of families out there who just want to get their kids a cool gaming thing, knowing that, okay, you're going to get all the Xbox games, Game Pass is $20 a month, and you're going to get all those games as part of Game Pass. Plus, you're going to get the PlayStation games if you really want them via Steam. So the OS would have to be more Windows. And if it's Windows, Sony can't really do anything about it. What do you think about that?
Yeah,
Do you think it's crazy?
I th- I think it would be cool. I think the chances of it happening are very low.
Why low?
Most of the
Like, why?
Well, first because uh, the worst part of the Steam Deck is that you don't know what games you can play on it, right? Like you open up that thing and it's got all these rules about like, well, this one is Steam Deck certified, this one maybe, this one definitely not, that sort of thing. And I think that feels like a bad experience to somebody who's in the Xbox ecosystem. Consoles are by design very simple, and they're supposed to be a very good user experience.
To be
You use a
fair,
little
all
more.
the Sony games are Steam Deck verified and work great
True.
on the Steam Deck.
True. But you wouldn't be able to get around the fact that like a good portion of everybody's library wouldn't be playable. And I don't know that that makes sense for the console buyer where they're used to everything kind of just like working. And so I think Xbox is probably going to want a more cohesive experience. And if they want a cohesive experience, it has to be games that they can control. And that means probably games that already run on their consoles and that are going to be compatible with a controller, an Xbox controller that's presumably attached to this device.
I don't know. I
So
don't
I
know.
think they're
I don't know, man, because like they also own Windows, and Windows it's the same problems that you're identifying.
right.
So,
Yeah, totally. But I think Windows, they're they're selling to a very different market. They're selling to the tinkerer who's okay with like having to go through 15 steps before they can play their game. And I don't know that that's the type of person who would buy this device. If they're that type of person, they'd probably buy the ROG Ally or something like that, where it's like that's like a super tinker,
mhm.
device. Like you really have to get in the guts of it. I think that Xbox is probably more inclined to make things like straightforward and clean and have its own UI software that they kind of cooked up for this device. I could be wrong if they go the other way and they go completely like open and make it crazy. I think it could absolutely run Steam. I just have my doubts that they're going to go down that road. That's not the only reason, right? I also think that they want to compete with Steam in some way. And I think obviously they work with Steam as well, just like they work with PlayStation. But I think ultimately Steam is a competitor. And I think this might be their Trojan horse to getting into that space of being like a a ecosystem for people to play games, right? You start buying games on Xbox, Now all of a sudden you're playing them on the Steam Deck competitor, and then you have access to them on your PC, and then next thing you know, maybe there's like a door or window there for them to eventually kind of sneak into that market, which they've tried to do a bunch of times and have not had a bunch of success. But I think they're going to continue to try. Um, and Yeah, I mean, we'll see. It's really interesting because they are taking a very different approach than like the PlayStation Portal, right? They're
What
not
if what
going
just to
cloud route.
interrupt you for a second. I'm just thinking about what
Yeah,
you just said. What if their plan is to turn that on their head and say they even have control? They're like, okay, all we want you to do is be able to play your Xbox games that are on Steam on Xbox and all of PlayStation's games on Xbox. And if Nintendo ever comes around, all the Nintendo
yeah,
games. Like, here's an approved list of vendors and PlayStation's on it. So
yeah,
Xbox is controlling what games you can launch from Steam versus
yeah.
Sony.
There's some possibility for that. The other option they could do is they could just clean up the UI a little bit. Like the Steam
Yeah.
Deck doesn't have to show you that like there's these 50 games that you can't play. Like if
Mhm.
Xbox made its own UI, it could just remove any games that are not compatible or perfectly
Yeah.
optimized from your list. What like they've done with their cloud service, right? Like they don't show you the games that aren't on Game Cloud. They
Yep.
only show you the ones that you can play. So I think there definitely is some potential for them to like clean it up and make it more user friendly. But
Do you think Sony
um,
could block it? I don't know how they
if it's
would
available
because it's
on
a PC
Steam,
game, right?
yeah, if it's available on Steam on a PC device, I kind of doubt it, but who knows?
Hmm.
I mean, they could just, it might make, PlayStation really likes their walled garden. I think that's the other side of the story is you're seeing PlayStation's reaction to it, which is sort of like to keep the walls of their walled garden in place and stick up their defenses. And that's kind of happening at a kind of bad time because they haven't had a great track record for exclusive releases recently. And so it there's a opportunity here for Xbox to do something pretty incredible, which is turn their biggest strength into a weakness, PlayStation's biggest strength into a weakness, and make them seem old fashioned with their current model. And PlayStation obviously doesn't want things to change because this is super working for them as
Hmm.
the status quo right now, right? So they're going to
Nintendo
want to,
too.
yeah, Nintendo as well. I do have a theory about why this is taking so long to make because obviously Xbox has like had some version of these plans for a while. I mean, they told IGN about it like last summer
Yeah, it was
or
at Summer Games Fest.
earlier this
I
year.
was there. I was actually
Yeah,
there, and I was like in Ryan's ear during that whole interview. So that was fun.
nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. But obviously they've been working on this for a while. My theory is that they are intentionally not putting this out until they see what the Switch 2 looks like.
Mm.
Because I think if they released it before, even if it was a more powerful console, they would get steamrolled by the Switch just by brand recognition
Steamrolled.
and yeah, right. I just think that they would get bowled over, and I think that they probably know that, and so they're probably going to wait for the Switch to come out, give it some breathing room, understand its specs and kind of what they're competing against and what that market looks like, and then place their bet. And I also think there's a little bit of gun shyness. Like I said this on Unlocked, but like after the Kinect, Xbox really has not released any peripheral devices, and they've been super afraid of it. And I think, you know, whether it's the VR world that they've completely eschewed, um, I think that there is some hesitance to get outside of what people were asking them to focus on, which is making powerful boxes that play the games that they want to play and not doing all the extra stuff.
Yeah. Speaking of exclusives and who has the rights to an exclusive and everything, one of the other big stories was this "no red lines" quote. Can you read the quote and then let me know what you think about it as it pertains to the Halo franchise? 'Cause a lot of fans are
Yeah.
worried now Halo is going to go to PlayStation. How do you
Yeah,
feel
so the
about that?
quote is, I do not see sort of red lines in our portfolio that way, or that say thou must not. And so, you know, basically just saying that and
Anything goes.
everything is on the table. I think it's smart. Like I said, I think Xbox has probably had enough time to learn at this point that keeping a game on one console, their console that has the fewest amount of players of the major consoles, is not a winning strategy. And especially when you have a multiplayer game like Halo, that game has suffered from lobby time problems because it's exclusive, and that's kind of a problem. So I think they're shooting themselves in their own foot. by keeping games on their own console. I get why players think exclusivity is important. I still do think it is important to a larger degree in the games industry. But I think for Xbox's position in particular, if you're in last place and you've been trying for over a decade to get people to move from one console to yours, and it's not happening, even when you have some what I would say are pretty great games, what are your options? Well, they can keep trying and hope that one of these days it course corrects, or they could do something new. And I think that that's what they're trying to do. And I also think, you can put the game on PlayStation, you can put it on the Switch too, etc., and you can still say, but it costs $70 on those platforms, and it's included in Game Pass if you play it on Xbox. And I still think that that is reason enough for people to say, yeah, you know what, maybe I will make Xbox my main console, even though it doesn't have exclusives, because I can get access to all these games. I can play Call of Duty every year without paying for the copy, and all I have to do is convince, my mom to give me $10 a month for Game Pass or whatever, right? Like
Hmm.
if I were a teenager, a kid doing that, that would be the path I would take, because I would just see that value as the reason to pick one box over the other. So I do think that they have a big opportunity there.
I think Xbox has made it very clear that they are going to release as many games as they can multi-platform. He said he sees no red lines. He said indie during the FTC trial that it would be exclusive, and they even had meetings about how it would be exclusive. And then it was revealed, what was it, late 2023, that it's coming to PlayStation shortly after launch, or is after the summer games event.
It was pretty. I think it
Yeah,
was this year. Yeah.
yeah, it was this year. Sorry. Uh, Regardless, though, that for me was a very important moment because I'm like, oh, they're done. Like they don't care about exclusives anymore. They're done with making tons of bespoke games that only run on the Xbox console, especially next gen only, because they only have the number is like 30 million units, which is nothing to scoff at. But your sell through on those consoles, it's not super high. So they're now on Steam. They're on BattleNet. Like Avowed's coming out on BattleNet and Steam and everything basically. So it's going to be launching day and date on all these platforms, and some of them get early access. They're trying to find new ways to incentivize users to come into the ecosystem, or just play their games by spending $70 and playing them on PlayStation. And a lot of PlayStation fans see that as a badge of honor. Like, oh, I was totally willing to pay $70 for the game. Haha. It's like, yeah, okay. You just,
Cool.
you're paying.
Xbox is happy with that.
Yeah, you're funding Xbox. Xbox is making money from that still. There,
Yeah.
what did you think about that article? There's this article that I like can't get over. GI.biz, who I normally really really love, had an op-ed about how Call of Duty Black Ops 6 could wind up being more profitable for PlayStation than it could for Xbox. You're a numbers guy. I just read it and I'm like, this is absolutely not going to happen. It's just not realistic at all.
I
Even
don't
the
know how
worst
you.
selling Call of Duty like broke records. Like the worst selling one
Yeah.
breaks every other record. What math would you have to do to say, "Oh yeah,
Yeah.
PlayStation's going to make the most here"?
I think if just on its face, if you look at a 30%, I think what PlayStation charges 30%
I
to sell
believe
on their
it's
store.
it's 70-30, but Kodak had negotiated 80-20, and I remember Jim Ryan wasn't
Sure.
happy about that. I don't know if
Okay,
that's
but
still
let's say
intact, but
let's
yeah.
say that it's set 30/70.
Mhm.
How does PlayStation make more money if Xbox is taking 70% of each sale?
Because Xbox is going to have a lower sell through than PlayStation because everybody's going to play it through Game Pass. But a lot of people on
Right.
Game Pass are also buying the upsell stuff like the $30 pack that gives you
So
the skins and the money.
if
And
the argument is
yeah.
that the game sells more copies on PlayStation, I think that's pretty hard to refute. But saying that PlayStation's going to make more money makes no sense, because they're only getting 30%. The other 70% of copies sold on PlayStation go to Xbox. So, like, I don't view it that way. I think it's like Xbox is, oh, you want to pay $70 for my game? Cool. That's win. That's money in my pocket.
Mhm.
Oh, you want to play it on Game Pass? That's also win, because it means you're playing in my ecosystem. You're subscribed. Hopefully, you'll say subscribe for a couple months. And anecdotally speaking, I've got friends that basically just play Call of Duty and Madden every year, right? Or in this
Mhm.
case, NC AAA or AA. And they are they're subscribing to Game Pass for the first time this year because of Call of Duty, and they're probably going to be subscribed to it for at least 6 months because they play this game for most of the year until they switch it to the one other game they'll buy that year. Helldivers 2 was probably the one this year
Yeah.
that they picked up, right?
And
So
there was Pal
the
World also. That was pretty big.
yeah, Pal World,
Mhm.
that was a big one. But like that's my point is it doesn't really matter. Like if you're buying their product, I don't think that they're going to be upset about it, and I don't think PlayStation obviously would like to sell. They're happy to take the 30% for a game that they can now sell on their console. I think it is wins all around, but I think if you're talking about who is making the lion's share of the money, even if you're selling most of the copies on PlayStation, Xbox is making most of the money. So
Yeah. I,
I really don't think they're going to care.
I thought it was totally ridiculous, just because for a few reasons. Well, partially because just mathematically it doesn't make any sense. Separately from that, Xbox is doing something good and they're being criticized for doing something good. Like it's pro consumer that you can access the game via Game Pass. It's a great bonus to being subscribed to the platform. And there wasn't really a lot of talk about that. It's just like Xbox is going to lose money doing this deal. It was just such a bizarre take on it. And with the Call of Duty situation, this game was made under Microsoft's leadership, and I'm all for being critical of Xbox when they're firing a bunch of people or they're releasing the Redfalls of the world or their content exclusivity library. But Black
Redfall.
Ops 6 is not something they should be criticized for. It's a phenomenal game. I love that. I probably have like 30 hours in Black Ops 6 this year. It's the most I've ever played Call of Duty. And I didn't play the last one that they released. Why? Because it was bad. Like the word of mouth was that the last Call of Duty was bad. This one isn't. And I think it's a little ridiculous that Xbox can't get a break in this particular scenario. Criticize them for the stuff they there's more than enough to criticize them for, right?
Yeah.
But in this situation, no. Like, what are you doing? It keep criticism where it's warranted. It's like
Yeah.
a lot of people are giving me a hard time because I talked about how fans are concerned about PlayStation buying the parent company of From Software. I'm blanking on their name. Uh, I don't care.
Bandai Namco.
No. The parent company of From Software is, it starts with a K. I can't remember. It's a
Mm.
Japanese company and they own all this anime stuff. I'll just be very clear. I don't care about billion-dollar companies buying each other. I care about the outcome of that situation and how it ends up benefiting consumers. And when a lot of people online, even big PlayStation fans, are saying, hey, actually, even I'm kind of concerned about this one, I find that notable. My personal take on it, though, hey, if we get a Bloodborne remaster, I think that would be great. If they do a Bloodborne 2 because PlayStation ends up being their boss, that would be great. Uh, Whatever. Like, if that company is looking to sell, somebody is going to buy them. They've been great partners with PlayStation for many years. So, sure. But, like, I'm also talking about overall sentiment. My personal take on it is, yeah, man, like, if they're going to sell, they got to sell to somebody. PlayStation makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I mean,
How did you feel
I
about
don't,
that whole acquisition stuff?
I mean, generally speaking, I'm not a fan of like the industry consolidating,
But like
right?
Activision was going to sell. Somebody was
Right.
going to buy Activision. It was going to be
And they
Tencent
sold
or
to
it
a
was going to
company
be,
that,
yeah, it's sold to an
yeah, they
American
sold to a
company.
company that,
Yeah.
yeah, they sold to an American company and a company that was going to keep their games on every platform from what we can tell. So I mean, that seems like a wash. Like to me, I'm less concerned about the Activisions of the world getting sold because they're already mega corporations being absorbed by even bigger mega corporations. And
Yeah.
so that to me doesn't really matter. I'm more concerned about like the double A studios getting acquired, the like Bungie getting acquired by Sony, where like I feel like there's this really good space of like the Bethesdas of the world where they're not the biggest companies in the world, but they are independent and they make high quality games and those games go everywhere and they're leading the industry. And I think you're a Bethesda for long enough, you grow big enough, and then you become an Activision, and then you kind of just become this big monster. And at that point, I don't really care what happens to you. But there is a troubling trend of like the smaller companies, maybe the double A or the big third party studios getting swallowed up that I'm less excited about. Um, Activision doesn't really bother me just because it was already like a giant company. Like how much worse could it get, really?
I,
Um,
well,
but yeah,
let me just, here's why I don't worry about that stuff very much. A, you're talking about millionaires and billionaires. Like, if they want to sell their company that they built from the ground up and get a big payday, they're going to do that. Right. So we can
Sure.
say that we don't like it or we don't like market acquisition, but it's just like, that's going to
Yeah.
happen. They're
Just
going
because
to
it's
sell this,
inevitable
or they're going to go out of
doesn't.
business. Because a lot of those companies that are looking to sell, it's not because they're like making tons of money. It's because they've mismanaged their company and now they're in the red and they need to do something. And they're like, okay, well, I'll take $40 million to like not
I don't know
collapse.
that that's true. I mean, there's certainly fire sales, right, where you have to do it, but a lot of times it's because the board of directors invested in this company. Many of them helped grow it from nothing to where it is, and they want to be rewarded for their success, and so they look for a way. Well, let's put money in my pocket. But I do think that there's nothing wrong with a player saying like, "Hey, you sold to this big company, took the money and walked away, and now like the games are getting worse because
Yeah.
of that." Like
It,
Bungie is a great example of like they went independent, they promised all of this stuff, they got acquired. People were like, "Oh man, now Sony's going to infuse all this cash in this company." Didn't happen. Instead, Sony seems to be scrapping the team for parts, and like
well,
there's a
it's
big brain drain going on over there, and none of the money went to the company. It all went to the people that owned the shares in the company, and so it's
but
just like
Bungie was going to
I
go out
get
of business. Like the reports are that it was so mismanaged that Bungie was like ready to go into
I
solvency.
I think the reports are that now Bungie is so mismanaged it's going to go into solvency, but
No,
I
no, no.
think that
They were
those are
like
years after.
no, no, no. It was before they had to sell to somebody because they had gone independent from Activision, and their burn rate was so high that basically they were like, we're screwed if we don't sell to someone. So they sold, and it was a bad deal on Bungie's part, a great deal for Bungie, but then they missed revenue targets by 45%. So like I know the
Yeah,
Bungie story really well, but to bolster your argument a little bit better, I think Embracer is a much better example of a
there
company
you
that's
go.
looking to make a bunch of money and they just torpedoed the franchises that we love. You know, like the
Yeah,
Saints Row
and
game
even
wasn't
look,
good. Like it was buggy. It wasn't as fun as people had hoped for. A bunch of those studios were just gone. They just axed everybody because they didn't get the money from the Saudi Arabia. Like the whole Embracer situation is a complete disaster. I think if you compare that even to the worst situation in the industry, which is the layoffs at Activision, probably we're at some ridiculous thousands of layoffs at Activision since the merger, which I think is a bad thing that should be criticized. I think Embracer is like 20 times worse than what happened there.
yeah. I just think even if a company does have its back up against the wall and feels like it has to sell, that's not a reason to not criticize it. You can still be disappointed in a company for not living up to its expectations,
I hear that.
especially one like Bungie where they made a bunch of promises like, "Oh, we're going to go independent. It's this whole new age," and they kind of sold you on this promise that never came. I just think like I like smaller companies because I think that they lead the industry in innovation. And when you see a vacuum being made and all these companies being bought when they're in their infancy or a little smaller, I think that that sucks a lot of creativity out of the room because these big companies by definition, they're so big they can't really they're not prone to taking risks. They want to hit their number, they want to get their revenue up and become more and more profitable every year. And that you do that by creating sequels and doing established, franchises and all that stuff.
Mm.
And it's very rare that you get a lot of creativity out of those places. And so I want to see the resurgence of those not totally small independent studios, but not quite as big as like the massive corporations that have sort of become creatively bankrupt over time. I think that that's something that we're seeing less of right now, which bums me out.
I
But
can
yeah,
no that I can
I,
agree
I
with you completely on. That's all I was going to say.
I think these companies getting bought will maybe mean that it leaves a vacuum for smaller companies to rise up and fill. Maybe we'll get a new. You're kind of already seeing it, like
It's already happening.
Annapurna
Yeah.
and stuff. Like they're getting steadily bigger, and so hopefully, um, we'll see this cool new generation of studios that are in the middle doing cool stuff.
I
I
said it
hope.
when the Activision deal was happening. I said like we're going to see mass consolidation. Like Bungie was being purchased, Activision's being purchased. Everybody's looking to sell. There's these massive industries like Bobby Kotick is just like I'm done. Like I've done enough here. I've made enough. I'm ready to sell and get out of the business, especially with all the controversy around it, I imagine. because of
His golden parachute. Got to
yeah,
do it.
get my golden parachute and get out of here. Like I'm tapping out. And I think a lot of companies feel like that after they've been in the biz as long as Activision was. Bethesda was in a situation where I think they just wanted somebody who they trusted with the Bethesda brand, and that wound up being Microsoft. I think that could have easily ended up being Sony, and I think the way they would have handled games would have been a lot differently. I think any company
Yeah.
Sony buys, those are going to be exclusively on PlayStation, and that's just how they
And
do it.
PC.
I thought at NPC, yeah, I thought at the time when Xbox bought Activision and Bethesda, I'm like, oh, okay, well, yeah, they said we want to make sure that Xbox gamers have great exclusives anywhere Game Pass exists. Apparently, that strategy didn't work very well because every Bethesda game except for Starfield basically is still multi-platform. We did get Redfall, which was part of that purchase, and that studio's gone. We got Hi-Fi Rush, and that studio is no longer owned by Microsoft. It
Con.
was picked up
Yeah.
by uh, the people who work on PUBG. It starts with a T. I'm blanking on their name.
Oh.
They were
Yeah, I
purchased
understand.
anyway,
Oh, yeah.
thankfully, Tango Gameworks. And yeah, so just an unfortunate situation with how it all panned out. But Xbox said one thing, and this is something they deserve criticism for, and they sort of set expectations with the Bethesda purchase, and then the Activision purchase happened. I'm like, oh, they're going to make exclusives. Okay, that makes sense. That's going to be an interesting strategy. Maybe they're going to like get Game Pass on PlayStation, and then you can play Call of Duty through Game Pass. But like, we all know the story, what happened there, and with the
Yeah.
looking back on the last 3 years and how all that consolidation ended up playing out, I'd say mostly now that we're kind of getting into the flow of it with the recent Call of Duty, at least, I think it's going to be better going forward.
Mhm.
I think the game quality is also going to be better, and hopefully they don't have to shut another studio.
Yeah, I mean, look, you can fail with no matter what your model is, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
Xbox can say Starfield is coming to all platforms. I don't think that would have helped that game because the game, to me, was not all it was chalked up to be, right? It was fine. Like I think a 7 out of 10 is appropriate
People
for
were
that, but it would
so mad about the 7 out of 10 everywhere,
no.
and in
And
hindsight,
now,
now everyone's
hindsight,
like they were
yeah.
right.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
But then on the other hand, you can go completely closed loop and make this big first party exclusive game like Concord and completely fall on your face as well. So
Mm-hmm.
I think great games succeed. I think if Starfield were a better game, Xbox would probably be like, wow, we should make all of our games super exclusive. So maybe the fact that Starfield didn't do well, um, will save us from increased exclusivity in the game space, which I think is good.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So
Yeah.
maybe it'll turn out to be a good thing.
Yeah, at the end of the day, I think Xbox's strategy, the no red lines thing, I think that's the future. And I get people are mad about it and everything, and I see them talking about it, and I'm just like, whether you think it's a good thing or not, it's where we're going. It's where PlayStation's going to go. It's where Xbox is going already, and they're ahead of the game because you can't sustain $300 million games with a 60 million user install base. You just can't. You know,
I
every
don't even get
person
like,
isn't going to buy your Spider-Man 2 or Spider-Man 3 or Wolverine or whatever. So,
but even if you're
yeah.
a fanboy, like, sure, you can't say like, yeah, only I can play Halo. Like, if they put that on the other platforms, you're not going to be able to say that anymore. But you are going to be able to say like, I didn't pay $70 for my Halo, right? Like, that's still
Mhm.
I just don't get why even a console warrior would be upset about this.
That-
It's like it helps them. They get to save money. They get to support their platform and,
mhm.
be Game Pass subscribers. And then they have friends who are on PlayStation. They can play with them and they can laugh about how they had to pay full price for it. So that's
Yeah.
right. It's like, just have
The,
fun, man. Play
the
where you want to play.
just to give you context, like the prevailing fear I see online is people are like, oh, I've invested $1,000, $2,000 in my Xbox library and I don't want it to ever go away. I'm like, they've confirmed the next generation of hardware, which is probably several years out. You have 15 more years minimum within the Xbox ecosystem. And the
Yeah.
idea that like Microsoft is just going to fold up shop and shut down anything related to games and delete your library. It's like Steam hasn't done that. Epic,
Yeah.
I'd be more worried about my Epic Games library
Yeah.
than I am about my Microsoft Games library.
Even PlayStation, you should
They're
be
a
more worried about.
trillion
They're
dollar
like,
company. you
They're a
know?
smaller company and they're attached to Sony, which has its own financial problems. Like Microsoft is one of the biggest companies in the world, so if you're talking about risk, I think you could do a lot worse
Yeah.
than Microsoft. Isn't
Uh,
it? Is it not the biggest company in the world right now?
yeah,
I know it got over a
they're
trillion.
huge. They hit the trillion
Yeah,
dollar mark. Like I'm not worried about my game library on Xbox. Like I'll be dead before they delete my game library is my
yeah.
take on it. Like I'm
I'll
40.
delete your game library when you're dead, by the way. I'll come to your
Yeah.
house right after the funeral and I'll wipe your drive.
I'm 42 now. I got a few more years in me.
Okay,
They did talk about more acquisitions in
they did.
China and for the mobile space. Let's be honest here. Like we're all talking about peanuts when you start comparing it to the gotcha games of the world, and they have seen massive success in China. How would you feel about Xbox buying like the Naraka Blade Point developer and having them make a great mobile game?
That would be cool. I guess I don't really mind either way. Like
Ah,
The Chinese
you said it
games
was
market
bad.
is. Oh yeah, mine. I mean, it is bad, but I'm saying for me, like you're asking my personal opinion. I don't
Yeah.
really play a lot of games that are from China. Like I played Naraka Blade Point very briefly.
Don't
Um,
play Genshin.
Genshin I did play. Is that China? I thought
Yeah,
that
it's
was.
China.
Is it China?
Yeah, pretty sure.
Yeah.
Did
Okay.
you play Black Myth
Um,
Wukong?
I have not played it yet. I own it.
That one's
I haven't
China.
played it.
Big
Yeah,
big
yeah, that one's China.
big
I
success
haven't. I
over
just.
there.
I guess I haven't played a lot of their. They're still kind of early as like a games market. I think like weren't video game consoles illegal there until like a decade ago or whatever. There's like some they
Did you play Super
released a while
Lario
ago.
RPG? No, I'm just kidding.
I did not. Um, yeah, but I will see on that one. I'm not really sure. It sounds like it's a mobile play again. I'm not really like a that big of a mobile gamer. I play occasionally, like maybe one mobile game a year, like Marvel Snap or this year the TCG Pocket or whatever. But yeah, I mean we'll see. Consolidation, not super excited about it. This to me was more like Phil kind of saying, yeah, we're open to it, right? Like the person asked, are you going to do more consolidation, more acquisitions, and they were like, "Oh, well, I mean, we're still dealing with Activision and putting that all under our umbrella, but we're also looking at, China is doing some interesting stuff. The mobile market's doing some
Yeah.
interesting stuff. They're
You
now like one of the biggest mobile developers in the world because of Candy Crush. So, um, it'll be interesting to see.
you would never say, "Nah, we're not going to buy anybody ever again." Like of
Yeah,
course. Yeah, we're still
you
looking.
know, investors are
You
going to
know.
read the article. You're not going to say, "Nah, we're fine. We're done growing as a
Yeah.
business."
Yeah,
You're
we're
not
done
going to say,
growing. No more investments. We're good.
"Yeah,
One investment they won't be making is in a $1,000 console. Phil had some words that seemed like throwing shade at the PS5 Pro. What did he
a
say
little bit."
specifically?
He said, I feel pretty good about where this industry is going. To reach new players, we need to be creative and adaptive of new business models, new devices, new ways of access. We're not going to grow the market with $1,000 consoles. So maybe a little bit throwing shade at PlayStation, but I think more this was in the section where he was talking about the possibility of a hardware refresh, which I think we're going to talk about a little later. But this is more kind of, I think, hey, we're focused on increasing access, getting our games in the hands of more players, and we're not going to chase some like premium niche market of people who are willing to pay $1,000 for a console. Like that's sort of the opposite of what they're trying to do. They're trying to get all their games to run on your kids, you know, AirPad or iPad. They're not
Everything. This is
doing
an Xbox.
everything.
Yeah.
They're trying to get you to play on everything except for a bento box. I think is what the commercial tells us. So, yeah, I thought it was an interesting comment. I think he's right. I think the data you pointed out earlier about the console market not really growing makes a lot of sense because I think the people who play on console, and yeah, it's not really where the future is right now.
Yeah. It's just kind of like everyone focuses on how well the PlayStation brand has been selling, and it's undeniable. It's been selling quite well, right? Is it going to outsell the PlayStation 2? Probably not. I think the Switch is the first console. I believe they said they've outsold it, but on Wikipedia, like the last official statistics, they're still behind the PS2. And the PS2 was a very special unit that came out at a very unique time when, you know, DVDs were a big thing
Yeah,
and everybody was.
sort of an unfair comparison because I think
Mhm.
the big barrier between like the reason consoles are selling well is because there are more gamers in the world now, right?
Mhm.
And more people who want to own a PlayStation. The reason the PS2 is an outlier is because people were buying that box not because it was a
It bridged
games
the
machine,
gap.
but because it played DVDs, right?
Mhm.
And so you're kind of like comparing the DVD, TV, video movies market against the games market, which at the time during the PS2 era was way smaller than
I
it is today. So I think if you're just talking about people who are buying it for games, like, you know, the PlayStation 4 and 5 have way more like gamers buying their console.
It's actually the handhelds. It's the DS and the 3DS, I think, beat the PS4. So the
More
PlayStation,
accessible.
yeah, more
Yeah.
accessible, easier to use, which is why I think the Xbox handheld is a interesting move. Um, I think the
Yeah, I was in
PS2, I think the
I went to
PS2, sorry, go ahead.
Africa in like 2016 and
Hmm.
like I went into three people's homes who had PS2s for DVDs still.
Like unironically.
No, yeah, they were just that's what they were playing their DVDs on. So like that just gives you a like an idea of the scope of the PS2. Like it was the cheapest DVD player you could buy at the time. So it was like
Well,
everybody got DVD like the
I
PS2s.
think it was a good value at the time because you got a
Yeah.
game box and you got a DVD box. Like I wanted it for that reason also. The fact that it could
Yeah.
do both. And I think that the PlayStation 2 is the most important console ever made because it got more people into gaming who otherwise never would have. It was a very popular console because of that DVD player, and it was a very smart move on PlayStation's part by adding it. Sure, the I think the 360 or the Xbox could do that also, but I think it came later, and Nintendo wasn't even thinking about that. They had the little discs at the time, right? Am I thinking about the right
Yeah.
console gen?
I
Um,
think you are, yeah. The GameCube.
yeah, so we owe a lot just in the gaming industry to the PlayStation 2, and it's one of my personal favorite consoles ever made. Um, I
And now
don't,
the irony is that the format of your
yeah,
hard disk doesn't matter at all. They're now selling consoles that don't have any physical media
you just
port.
stream everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I do think that hardware isn't going to grow. So I think the PlayStation 5 is doing exceptionally well. I don't think it's going to outsell the PS2. I don't think it's going to outsell any of the. It might outsell the PS4, you know, by a bit, but time will tell on that one. But it doesn't really matter because a $300 million game is still not going to sell enough copies just in one place. And that's why Sony has diversified their portfolio. They don't want some of the money, they want all the money, right? So they need
Yeah.
to be able to sell in more places. We went way
Every
longer than I
company wants
thought
to
on
be a
this.
monopoly. Yeah.
Huh?
Every company wants to be a monopoly, man.
Yeah.
That's the goal, right?
And today they updated their handheld so that you could stream games like without being tethered, I think. So that's pretty cool too.
Very cool.
Good update.
The
Uh,
Portal?
yeah, the portal. Do you have a
Nice.
portal?
I do not.
I was just hearing things about it today. So it's kind of like how Xbox can stream to your phone. You can do that now with your portal, basically.
See, that would make me buy it because the reason I didn't buy it is because it was like, oh, well, you have to be near your PlayStation,
Not
and
anymore.
when you need a second screen, I'm like, well, I've already got like 15 screens in my house. Like, I'm never going to be in a situation where I need like a PlayStation in my pocket unless it can play games self-contained. So if it can, maybe I'll buy a Portal.
Check out the update. It's interesting. Long story
Cool.
short, Xbox is very healthy. Phil Spencer said multiple times in those interviews that they're doing great. Right?
Yeah, and they're going to make a portable device, maybe. So
I'm
pretty
down for
cool.
that. Yeah.
Yeah,
Congrats on the Call of Duty launch, Xbox.
good job.
Last topic. I don't know if we're going to argue about this one. This is like bonus
I'm
topic. I'm
excited.
probably going to make my own video about it. We talked about it Unlocked. Game of the Year awards were announced. It is, I'm going to try and remember them. It's Astrobot,
Mm-hmm.
Balatro,
Mm-hmm.
Shadow of the Erd Tree, Final
Mm-hmm.
Fantasy VII Rebirth, Metaphor Refantasio, and Black Myth Wukong. There is one entry on there that I think does not belong, and it is Shadow of the Erd Tree. I do not think it should be in the Game of the Year, period. I think it's ridiculous that it's there. and the arguments for it are moot. You need to buy a 2022 release in order to access it. And even then, you need to have played the 2022 release to a point where you've defeated a certain boss and can enter the new DLC area.
That's true. It is very hard
Yeah.
to access. I had to remember where the sanguine land was to get into the DLC. It's true.
I think the game needs to have been released the year that it is being nominated for, and it needs to be accessible without any previous game that has been released. I think it's just Elden Ring, and for some reason it got on the ballot because it's
And it's
Elden
gonna
Ring.
win, by the
If it
way.
wins, I'm not going to be a
It's gonna
happy
win.
camper.
It's gonna win. I mean, it's Elden Ring, dude.
I think Black Myth is going to take the popular vote from because fans get to vote for 10% of who wins. You think the fan base, like everybody in
Yes,
China
dude.
loves Black Myth
That's fine. But everyone in China and everywhere in the rest of the world loves Elden Ring. Just look at Google Analytics. Like, dude, that traffic for Elden Ring is insane.
for the original. Yeah, I guess just brand
Yeah,
recognition,
it's
period.
just brand recognition. There's just
Mhm.
gonna be a bunch of people going, "Oh, Elden Ring, yeah." Click.
Well, I think the reviewers, I like internally on Unlocked, nobody liked the fact that Elden Ring was on that list. So at least
Oh,
in
I don't like it
IGN,
either.
and like your media, you
That's
don't like
true.
it?
I mean, I voted not for Elden Ring, but I also voted for um Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth.
Yeah.
And that didn't even get nominated.
Yeah.
So I don't know what to tell you. That's a snub. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I think look, I also don't like that remasters or remakes get on the list. Like I was kind of
Yeah.
upset about Resident Evil 4 last year. Like it kind of
Yep.
seems like if it's the same game, it shouldn't be nominated. But
It's
I
it's
think
a
it says more about the other games that came out, right? If
mhm.
Elden Ring expansion wins, it's kind of because maybe this year wasn't as fantastic a year for games as we thought, right?
Helldivers 2 could have been on there. Pal World could have
It's
been on
true.
there. Space Marine 2
Power
could have been
World's
on there.
early access. I don't know how I'd feel about that game getting nominated. Maybe when
Okay.
it gets its 1.0.
Space Marine, fantastic
Space
game,
Marine,
could have been
that's a
on
great
there.
game.
And a lot of people are saying Stellar Blade should have had a shot. So those are
Yeah.
four off the top of my head that people are just saying could have had a shot, but we have a remake and a DLC on the list.
Well, I will defend Resident Evil or Final Fantasy VII because I like I said, I'm not a fan of remakes, but that
Mhm.
game kind of isn't a remake. It's false advertising to say that Final Fantasy VII remake or Rebirth are remakes. They're actually sequels. They're just kind of disguised as remakes.
Mhm.
So I'm more okay with those. Those are like very original works. But yeah, I mean, I'm not that excited about an expansion getting nominated. I will say it's a fantastic expansion. I think part of the reason it got nominated, I think there's two reasons. One, for whatever reason, the Game Awards does not have Best Expansion or DLC as a category.
And
And
it
so I
should.
think
That
people are
solves the
like,
problem.
that solves the problem. It gives you a place to vote for Elden Ring. And I would say if that were a category, Elden Ring would win probably pretty handily,
Yeah.
right? So I think that's the first problem. The second problem is Jeff Keighley does not provide any guidelines for his Game Awards. He does not tell you how to vote or even give you like outlines of like what can be nominated. And so I think people not being clear on whether an expansion qualifies means that some people who believe that expansion should count nominate it. And so I think that part of this could be solved if Keeley would like have a stronger opinion on like, hey, here's what this category means and here's the type of games that should be in it. Because I'll tell you, as somebody who voted on it, when you go down the list and you see best action game and then immediately after that best action adventure game, I have questions. Like I want to know what that means, right? And I think a lack of clear instructions are the reason games like Sifu got nominated for best fighting game, which I would not describe as a fighting game. And so it's just a little bit confusing the way the categories are set up. And so I understand why this happened. I don't agree with it, but it's probably going to win.
Yeah. How do you feel about, and I know how I feel about this. I just want to hear what you think. How do you feel about Balatro being on the list?
I like Balatro.
Me too.
I think I could see that being game of the year. I don't know if I would count it in like the top 6 games I played this year, but there was a vibe, man. I think I played that game for like 3 weeks straight where I was just addicted to it. So that
It's
game's damn good.
it is very good. I was kind of like Balatro. That's an interesting choice, and then I played it and I got it, right
Really?
away.
You played it after you saw the nominations,
Yeah, yeah. I'm
or
like, oh yeah,
wow?
this is great. Like it's
It's
really good.
really good, dude.
Yeah.
Also, it's a perfect game for someone like you who's raising kids and doesn't have a lot of time because
Oh
you can
yeah.
play that game super passively
Yeah.
on your phone. Like,
Hmm.
yeah, that's a great game for parents.
The other one I didn't get until I played it was Astrobot. I think
Nice.
I like Astrobot a lot. I was watching that. I'm like, this has to be recency bias. Like they just played Astrobot and everybody sees it on the list and they're like, oh yeah, I should vote for Astrobot or nominate Astrobot. But then I played it and I'm like, oh, it's just like a phenomenally well done platformer, and it has all this charm to it. And I didn't even have to play that long, but if you just play Astrobot, you get it almost instantaneously.
Very cool.
How do you
Yeah.
feel about Astro?
I played the first Astrobot on VR and then the one that came out on the PS5,
PS5.
the base
Yeah.
PS5, and neither of them struck me as like amazing just because they kind of felt like tech demos, but everyone I know who has played Astrobot is this Astrobot 2? What was it called?
It's just called
This
Astrobot. The other one was called like
okay.
Astrobot and a
Astro's
subtitle.
Playroom.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's right.
Hmm.
Yeah, so everybody who's played this game says that it's really great. I just haven't had time for it. I plan on playing it before the end of the year, so I can be informed about it for Game Awards and stuff. But yeah, I've not played that one.
Long story short, it's like a perfect platformer. So
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, I'm like so on third person platformers. I think that genre kind of died off for a reason, but I love when games prove me wrong, like Mario Odyssey and hopefully Astrobot. Like when you play one that really changes the game and levels up, it feels awesome. It's just they're so rare these days.
and I want to ask you about one. Have you played Metaphor ReFantasio?
Yes, I'm almost done with it. I'm like 109 hours into that game, and I think I'm playing it with my wife Dee, and we're like really close to the end.
How do you feel about it?
Love
Is
it.
it a contender?
Great game. Oh yeah, definitely contender. That I think in my nominations I did include it as like a one that I think should get nominated.
Yeah.
I don't think it's as good as Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth, but it's really good.
Who did you nominate?
Fantasy game.
Who did you nominate personally? You mentioned some that I didn't
Um
expect.
yeah, I nominated Infinite Wealth and then I think Metaphor ReFantazia was on that list. I can't really remember some of the others. Oh, you know what I nominated that really is no one is going to even hear about this game? Is Asgard's Wrath 2. That game came out in December of last year, but because it
Because of the
came out
weird,
after the Game
yeah.
Awards, it never got nominated. So I nominated it for both VR category and for Game of the Year, and it didn't get either. So
Boo.
I think the thing I've learned is that the games I nominate don't win. But it's yeah, that game is if you have not played it, if you have a MetaQuest, that game is a trip, man. I mean, it is truly a game changer in the games industry. It's also the only 10 out of 10 I've ever given at IGN out of hundreds of reviews. So
The game name that I
Asgard's Wrath
already
2.
forgot. Yeah.
Asgard's Wrath 2, yeah.
Yeah.
Only 10 out of 10 I've given.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Uh, my nominees were Metaphor, Helldivers,
Good nominee.
Space Marine, Black Myth, and there was one more. I actually can't remember who the other one was, but those are four that I remember nominating for sure.
Nice.
I think it might have been Final Fantasy Rebirth. I had
Rebirth,
played.
nice.
I'd played only a bit of a few of those, but those are my front runners for Game of the Year, definitely.
Nice.
And
Oh, Balatro was on my list too.
Balatro.
Balatro
Oh yeah,
was
on
on
my
my list.
personal list. Now that I've played it, I need to play more Metaphor. I only played like 2 hours of it or so, but I
Mm,
was like, this game's freaking great. And I had played like an hour at an Xbox event, so I kind of knew all the components, and I really enjoyed that one. Uh, yeah, I don't know about Balatro going on my personal list. Like, I really like it, but I think it's just a really, really, really good game. I don't know if it's like a
yeah.
game of the year game,
Yeah.
for me
I the
personally.
the thing
Yeah.
I look for game of the year is like the game that pulled the industry forward the
Yeah.
most. And so I tend to not nominate like a lot of games that are kind of just more of the game
Katamari
we've seen before.
Damacy wouldn't have got him nominated for
Yeah.
me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like and even Final Fantasy Rebirth I put on that list because it is sort of like a continuation. I don't think it really innovates in any major way.
Hmm.
Metaphor is like right on the cusp. Like it kind of plays a little too much on just every JRPG you've ever played, but I think it does so much well that I'm inclined. But like, that's why Asgard's Wrath 2 is on my list is because that game pushes the industry forward in the VR space like you wouldn't believe. And I think there's an argument for that with Balatro, like the idea of a card game that's unlike any other card game you've ever played, that's instantly addictive, and you could totally see more games like that coming out. Like I think that there's got a decent argument there for that.
Awesome. I hear you. I got to play more games for the end of the year. I still got to play
Me too.
Stalker. Still got to play Indie. The Game
Yep.
Awards, last hot take, Game Awards should go through December. It's absolutely
Agreed.
nonsense that it like
Agreed.
cuts off when it cuts off like before November.
November 5th, I think it
That's
was. It was like
stupid.
the first week of
Why?
November. Yeah.
Why? So you can
It
make
is
sure
very
you get your
dumb.
Q4 revenue? Is it like a tax reason? Like I don't get it.
I
Yeah.
don't really get it either, but it has always bothered me. And then they don't go back and like remind people, hey, here are the games that came out last year
Yeah.
that still qualify for this year. Like I had to
Forza got
ask, like, hey,
robbed.
can I nominate Asgard's Wrath 2? And then I had to wait for somebody to get back to me and like, go, yeah, it counts. You can nominate that game. And it's like, all right, well, nobody else is. Nobody's gonna remember that that game came out last year, so it's a bit of a bummer.
Travis, thanks for hanging out with me. What do you want
Yeah,
to
man.
promote? Where can people watch you?
Uh, yeah, you guys can check out a preview I did for IGN last week for an Xbox game, South of Midnight, which I
Ooh,
went and played
what'd you think?
in Montreal. It's very cool.
Yeah,
Yeah, I talked about it on Unlocked last week, and then yeah, if you we can talk about that next time I'm on the show because
sure.
I have a lot to say about it. But it's very cool, very stylish, very cool music. Coming to Game Pass next year. So. Also, I got to meet Ahmed Best, the actor that plays Jar Jar Binks. So that was super cool because he's working on that project. Yeah, so you can do that, and then my next review is Path of Exile 2. So I'll be
You're
working on that
reviewing it
pretty shortly here. I am reviewing
for
it.
who?
Yeah. So for you guys,
That's great.
for us, for IGN. I only write for IGN now.
Yeah,
So yeah, that'll be cool. And then that's pretty much it. You can watch my other shows. I do Bitcast, a show called Bitcast on Sundays, which you can see on my
I
social media. I
troll.
post
Is that the one I
at
troll in?
Tiger. You do troll on that one. You
Okay,
come in
yeah,
the comments and you
yeah,
make fun of us, which is
yeah,
great.
yeah.
That's a fun show you can listen to. And yeah, that's it, man. I'm just glad to be here talking to my buddy Destin. Fire team, fire team out.
I have
I don't
two
know.
previews coming out on IGN too.
Sweet.
For Path of Exile, I got to do the last preview, and then you get to do the
Love to
review,
hear it. I did the first preview for Path of Exile. The first time they showed the
and then I got
game
to do
or
the
what
next
you
two.
got to do the last. Yeah,
Yeah, two or
exactly.
three. I don't know.
Yeah.
This one was really, I really struggled with this one because I'm like, I've written about this twice now. This is like the third time I have
Yeah.
to write a preview because I did the witch and the ranger and the monk. And
Yeah.
I think, what are you going to roll in Path 2?
I probably will go Druid. I really like the
Druid's
way the
not available right away. I don't
Oh, you're
think.
right. That
Yeah.
was so I played Druid, which
Yeah.
is funny that
I
the
did a
one I played is not
Gamescom.
gonna be
Yeah.
available.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was gonna pick Druid because they have the bear roll. Did they
Mhm.
show you
Yeah.
when you're in town, you
Yeah.
can
And you
roll?
can roll as a bear. It's
Yeah,
great.
it's, I just want to do that everywhere. That's the only reason.
Mhm.
So not that. What was the one where you get a gun? That one looked cool to me.
That's Mercenary. That's my preview.
Yeah,
So that came out this
Mercenary.
week.
I might roll with that.
This is going to air on Saturday, but that'll be out. It's pretty good, but there's a lot of reloading. Just play that class for like a few hours, and if you're digging it, keep going. But it really transforms the game into almost like a shooter intentionally. Jonathan Rogers talked about how he's like, it makes it more like a shooter, and we looked at shooters to like pull from those mechanics and such. So it ended up working out to their advantage. And
I'm into it,
yeah, it was
frankly.
it was cool. It was cool. Um, and what else was I going to say? I love that game. I'm probably going to roll. I can't decide if I'm going to do monk or ranger. I really like both those
Mm.
classes. They were definitely my favorites. Witch is cool. She can like raise all the corpses, and their sorceress, who is like your wizard basically from Diablo. And I'm really torn. Sorry, I forgot that you did the preview, and we haven't really had a chance to talk. And December's right around the corner. I'm very excited for that game. And
That's
then
gonna be super cool.
and then I previewed Avowed. So
Ooh,
yeah, they let us take home a build, and I have it running in the background while we record this, because when I turn it off, they're gonna kick me out.
you lose
So
access.
I wanted to just see how much of the Dawnland or whatever I could explore. I really like it. I think it's really good.
Cool.
I did not like Veilguard. Veilguard wouldn't let me be a dick and wouldn't let me be evil. Oh, you get to be evil like from the get go. You can be
Ooh, I
so
love
shitty to
that.
people. I I'll spoil a little bit of a quest. There was a preview quest we did, and there's a character in the game. And then I know we got to get out of here. I'm sorry.
That's all good. It's all
Uh,
good.
there was this Sargamus character, and I'm like talking to him, realized I could convince him to kill himself. And I did exactly that. And he had this badass sword. So like my preview was written. I'm like, we
Wow.
gotta get footage of this cool freaking sword in the preview. So like it's like end of the day. I'm like, you have to put a clip in of this sword I just got from Sargamas. And yeah, and then
Wow.
I activated a statue. I put a god into the statue. It's really cool. I think it's gonna be good. I hope it's good because I've been having a lot of fun with the previews. And I was a detractor. I was like not about the art style. I've totally done a 180. I really like it. I hope
Cool.
people, I think people are really going to like it when they play it.
Well, I
Anyway,
love Obsidian. I think they
yeah.
make fantastic RPGs. So I've been excited forever, but I don't think I'm going to be involved in any of the previews or reviews. So I'm just going to be playing that as a normal player. And I'm excited because I have not seen anything. I've not looked at any of the previews or watched any of the video documentaries or anything. So
Yeah. Well, I really like it. So that's all
cool.
I'll leave you with. Thank you, Travis. I really appreciate you hanging out
Thanks,
and doing
Dustin.
this show with me. All right.
Yeah.
And thank you for watching. I really appreciate you, everybody. Thank you so much watching me live switch this whole thing. Hit that subscribe button, hit that bell if you like my content. I do greatly appreciate you watching. It does mean a lot if you also hit that like button. If you're already subscribed, it does help the algorithm. Thank you so much to the members. Members like you help this video be possible. Thank you so much. Click that join button if you want to become a member and support and watch long videos like this one without any ads. I got to get out of here, but you can check out last week where I sat down with Paul and we talked about our Game of the Year nominations before they were revealed. I'm going to get out of here. I'll see you for the next one. Bye for now, everybody.